Hey guys, today I'm not going to be making a budget deck. I'm going to be telling you how to make your own budget decks by showing you some cards that I think are budget modern staples. Basically, cards that are really good and modern that you've maybe never heard or maybe never considered for the format before. I have numbers over here. This is just how many of the card I would recommend playing if you're going to play it. The Royal Scions is the first one. It's a 3-mana red and blue planeswalker that has +1, draw a card, then discard a card. Also +1. Target creature gets +2/+0 and gains first strike and trample until end of turn. -8, draw 4 cards. When you do the Royal Scion, deals damage to any target equal to the number of cards in your hand, and it starts at 5 loyalty. Now this card I think really is excellent, and it's great in really a bunch of Izzet decks. It got played a decent amount when it first came out, and then everyone just stopped because they didn't really know how to use it. Everyone tried doing draw a card, then discard a card. While when I use it, I try to think of the second ability. Target creature is +2/+2 and gains first strike and trample until the end of turn, which I think is really an excellent ability. And especially because it works really well if you target Ragavan, because it's a 4/1 with first strike and trample, so they have to chump block it, and if they don't put 4 toughness in front of it, then you get through with your Ragavan, which is really hard to do otherwise. And it starts at 5 loyalty. If you plus it, it goes up to 6. So it's really hard to take this out through combat damage, and the -8 is actually not that hard to get to. And it really is a great ultimate. I have one other planeswalker, Elspeth Sun's Nemesis. It's a 4-mana white planeswalker that starts at 3 and it has -1 up to 2 target creatures you control each get +2/+1 until end of turn. -2, create 2 1/1 white human soldier creature tokens, and -3, you gain 5 life. And it has escape for 6 mana, exile 4 other cards from your graveyard. So, one of the first things you'll notice about this card is that it does not have a plus ability. It just goes down and down until it dies. But then, when it dies, you can escape it from your graveyard and get it back onto the battlefield. Now, really the way I would recommend using this, I have it marked down as 2 in a deck. I really just use it to hold up the back end of the deck. So in some white aggressive deck, normally it's winding down by turn 4, and if your opponents have managed to deal with some of your threats, this really just helps you get back on the table, because you can -2 it, instantly get 2 1/1s, and then next turn, -1, they become 3 2s, and then they swing in, potentially for 6 damage, which it really helps you get back on board. And I wouldn't really recommend using the -3, even though it is a really good thing if you're at 2 life or something. And the escape is not that hard. As long as you keep drawing cards, you're going to draw more lands, play lands. I think, and it's going to stay around for a few turns, enough to get you up to 6 mana. And yeah, exiling 4 cards is not really that hard in the circumstance that it's played. And escaping is a repeatable ability, so it just keeps coming back, and it's really hard for your opponents to permanently deal with. On to creatures. Here I have Scourge of the Skyclaves, marked at 3. It's a 2-mana XX, and it has Kicker for 5. If you cast this spell, if it was kicked, each player is half their life rounded up, and its power and toughness are equal to 20 minus the highest life total among players. I think this is a lot better of a card than it gets credit for, especially in Modern, because everyone's playing fetches and shocks. Each player is consistently going to lose 2 life from that each game, which makes this a 2/2 for 2, which I mean, it isn't bad, and it gets better as the game goes on, because the whole point of the game is dealing damage to each other, which this is also doing pretty well, because it's attacking in. And if somehow you're playing against a control deck, and you manage to get up to 7 mana, you can just play this for 7, and it's on cast, so even if they counter, it'll still trigger and it'll make a huge dent in their life total. And yeah, it's really great. Blade of Vioni. I have this marked at 4 copies. It's a very good card. It's a 2 mana 3/1 artifact creature equipment demon, and it has menace. And an equipped creature has base power and toughness 5/5, and has menace and is a black demon in addition to its other colors and types, and it has reconfigure for 4. So you play this second turn, and then you can just swing in with it, because no one's going to block a 3/1 menace if you're attacking with it on the 3rd or 4th turn, because very few things have toughness 4 or greater, and normally if they block this, it's going to be at least a 1/1, normally a 2/1 though. And if they somehow manage to make it obsolete, you can just reconfigure it onto something else, and then they have a bigger problem to deal with. And you can get a lot of damage in that way, and I think it really is a great card, and you should all run it. Yonti Malison. This is a 2 mana 2/1 that I have marked at 4 copies, and it can't be blocked as long as it's attacking alone, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, venture into the dungeon, which is a bit complex. Hopefully you know it, because I'm not going to explain how it works. So the first part of text helps a lot, because it's not uncommon for you to leave stuff up for blocks and then just swing in with this, get in, and generate value as the game goes on. And yeah, I think that venturing in the dungeon is actually a lot better than it gets credit for. And for this card, normally I would recommend going into the Lost Mine of Phandelver, which can let you scry, draw cards, make treasures, make blockers, and I think it's great that way, and it just smooths the entire game out for you. This really is one of those cards where you just have to play it to see how good it is. And here you have Galleries, which I also have marked at 4. It's a 2 mana 1/1 that has Alliance. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. You can either put a +1/+1 counter on Galleries, make a tap treasure token, or gain 2 life. Now this is really good because it can do a bunch of different things, in the sense that sort of Umezawa's Jite can, if you know that card. It can get bigger and become a substantial body. It can make treasures to potentially cast more bigger things, and it can gain you life, which can help get you out of a tough spot. And I think that normally this is a very great card. Foldarin Bloodcaster. This is a 2 mana 2/1 with flying that I have marked at 2. And whenever it or another creature I control dies, I could create a blood token, which has pay 1 and tap it, discard a card, sacrifice this artifact to draw a card. So it lets you loot, basically. And whenever you create a blood token, if you control 5 or more blood tokens, transform it, and it transforms into Bloodbath Summoner, which is a 3/3 with flying at the beginning of combat entry. Up to 1 target blood token you control becomes a 2/2 black bat with flying and haste in addition to its other types. Yeah, I don't think anybody really intends to flip this. It's just there because it lets you draw cards whenever your creatures die, and it's also a 2/1 flyer, so it can ping your opponents for damage, which can add up over time. And whenever your stuff dies, you get to get more stuff into your hand to play it. It also really does help smooth the game out for you. And somehow, if you get to 5 blood tokens, you can start to go aggressive with them. Of course, I don't recommend aiming for that. Werewolf Pack Leader. This is a card that people have been playing in Standard, but it's recently lost a lot of popularity, and I think it really does deserve more than that. It's a 2 mana green 3/3, and with whenever it attacks, if you attack a creature with total power 6 or greater this combat, draw a card, and you can pay for it, so until end of turn. It isn't a human, and it's a 5/3 with trample. Well, first of all, it's a 2 mana 3/3, which is always good, and it can draw you cards through attacking, which in a green deck is really where you want to be. I have this marked at 2 of them in a deck, but I could definitely see you going up to 3 or 4. And if you're able to get 2 of them out on the battlefield, then when they trigger, you automatically get Pack Tactics and draw 2 cards every turn, which is also pretty great. And if somehow you end up with extra mana that you can't spend, which is unlikely because you're drawing so many cards, you can make it a 5/3 with Trample, which really can end games in a green deck. Now here we have Last New Helion, which is a 4/4 for 3 with haste. When it enters the battlefield, you get 2 energy counters, and at the beginning of your end step, you sacrifice it unless you pay 2 energy. I talked about this in my last video, and in that I said that it was a really good card, and it really should be played in more decks, which honestly gave me the idea to do this. And yeah, it really is a good card in any kind of red aggressive deck, because you play a 3rd turn. Normally they can't do anything about it. They either have to take a lot of damage or make some hard blocks, and it pays for itself the first time. So even if you don't have any good ways to make more energy, it's still good because you can attack with it twice, and by that time you've basically ended the game. Yeah. And also, one of the things that you would play as an alternative to this is a 3/3 for 3 with haste, which people do use, which normally get dealt with almost immediately. It's almost like the paying effect doesn't really matter, because it really is just going to get removed anyway. Jade Avenger. It's a 2-mana 2/2 with Bushido 2. Whenever this creature blocks or becomes blocked, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. I think most people overlook this because it's really a simple card, and I think it's actually very useful because it's really more of a defender than an attacker, even though it can attack very well. But normally you can leave it up for blocks on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th turn, and your opponents normally just can't do anything about it, and it can really stop your opponents from attacking you. And if you're in a place where you don't need to do that, you can attack with it, and they can't really block with it. They just have to take the 2 damage, which I've learned is really useful. Flametongue Yearling. This is something that I discovered a while ago, and am particularly excited about that. It's a 2-mana red 2/1 with multi-kicker 2. You can pay an additional 2 any number of times as you cast this spell, and it enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each time it was kicked. So if you spend 4 mana, it's a 3/2. If you spend 6 mana, it's a 4/3. And when it enters the battlefield, it deals damage equal to its power to target creature. Now, the thing that I really like about this is that it's a removal spell on a creature, which I've seen in the past is extremely good, and it can put you way up in card advantage and tilt the board in your favor, and sometimes even decide the game. And it also scales really well. So if you just top deck this on, and you have like 4 or 6 lands out, then you can just pay the multi-kicker a couple of times and make it bigger and destroy that one big threat that's gonna kill you. And now you have a big threat that's gonna kill them. And it's really great that way. Militia Bugler. It's a white 2/3 with Vigilance for 3. And when it enters the battlefield, you look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card with power 2 or less from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. The great thing about this is that it's a creature that's almost guaranteed to replace itself with another thing. It helps you get on board more, and a 2/3 with Vigilance in Modern is a pretty decent body. Especially because it can attack, and then defend, and then attack again, and yeah, it's just really great that way. And it really also is something that you have to play with to figure out how good it is. And also, one fun thing that I've ended up doing with it is you can just loop it, where a militia bugler gets you another militia bugler, and so on, until you just have this really weird board state. Now on to the instance. Lightning Bolt, which is something I'm sure you've heard of. It's a 1 mana instant that it deals 3 damage to any target, which you probably heard of and are playing. But I figured I should probably mention it anyway, just because so many people don't know how good it is, and how it's actually pretty affordable, and how they probably should be playing it. And if you don't know, it really is one of the best cards in the format. And if you're not playing it, you probably should be. Fading Hope, which it's a 1 mana instant that's been making waves in Standard, but I've started playing it in Modern and I've realized that it's really good there. It's a 1 mana instant that says, return target creature to its owner's hand if its mana value is 3 or less, scry 1, which is most of the creatures in Modern, so you're normally going to be able to scry. And it really is great against so many decks. It can absolutely ruin Titan, and it can set Murktide Regent back like 5 turns, which is just incredible. And those are only some examples. It really does something great against any matchup. Witherbloom Command, which is, in my opinion, one of the best of the budget commands. It's a 2 mana Golgari sorcery. We're on to sorceries now. And it has choose 2. Either target player mills 3 cards, then you may return a land from your graveyard to the battlefield. Or destroy target non-creature, non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less. Target creature gets -3/-1 until end of turn. Target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. So it can really always do something useful. It has destroy target non-creature, non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less. That hits red and 6. And it also hits Amulet of Vigor against Titan. And most decks really do have something useful that can hit. And target creature is -3/-1 until end of turn. There's a bunch of good creatures that have 1 toughness. Like half of the things in the creatures list do. So we can kill most of those. And it can also hit Ragavan. Just saying. And if only one of them is appealing to you, this target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life, which is almost never going to be bad. I've never been in a situation where that's bad. Inquisition of Kozilek and Despise. I have these together because they do sort of the same thing. They each have the opponent reveal their hand and you choose something from it and discard it, but they each have different constraints. Inquisition is it has to cost 3 or less, and Despise has to be a creature or planeswalker. Now there's a bunch of cards that do the same thing, but I found that these are really the best ones. And I have them marked down for 4 of each, because that's how I like to play all of my black decks. Because this just guarantees that you get 1 of them in each of your opening hand, and sometimes 2, which if you get 2, your opponent just doesn't stand a chance. It's insane. I've had decks where I run like 20 of these effects, which is probably not the smartest move, but it works. It really does work. And yeah, it just ruins your opponent's entire strategy for just 1 mana. Unearth, which is a 1 mana black sorcery. Return to a creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. And it has cycling 2. This card is amazing because almost every creature in Modern costs 3 or less. So it can hit almost anything. Like, for example, look at this. It hits every creature on here. And even if you're not in a mill type strategy, it's great. Because, I mean, stuff dies. Your opponents have removal spells and stuff like that. And you can just bring them back, which is really great. And even if something weird's going on and that's not happening, you can just cycle it to draw another card. And in the sideboard, I have this in the sideboard because it really is a sideboard card. I have Stagger Shock. It's a 3-mana instant that deals 2 damage to any target, and it has Rebound. So, as you cast the spell from your hand, exile it as it resolves. At the beginning of your next upkeep, you may play it from exile without paying its mana cost. So, it really is great against sword decks like Burn that have a bunch of small creatures that can be really annoying. Because if they do, it just wrecks their entire board state, and it's an instant, so you can play it on their end step and then copy it again. So it really does just decimate your opponents in the right matchup. Yeah, and I think that's all I have to say on these cards. I just realized I stopped talking about the amount of cards halfway through. Helion is 3, Jade Avenger is 2, Flametongue Yearling is also 3, Militia Bugler is 2, Lightning Bolt is 4, Fading Cope is 4, Witherboom Command is 3, and Inquisition 4, Despise is 4, and Unearth is 3, and Stagger Shock is 2. So, anyway, don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye. I'll see you next time.